So part of the strategy is probably let's pretend that nobody in their right mind would care, even though, as you point out in the article, a number of organizations going back to at least 1980 have responded to these criticisms by changing team names, Stanford and so on. But, and the other question I want to ask, I was fascinated by the history of Lone Star Dietz, but in a sense, why does it matter? I mean, if any racial stereotype is involved in your mascot, then whether or not there's Stepin Fetchit was a historical figure, but it would be objectionable to use him today. Why would it matter, in a sense? Why would the use of an offensive term be justified by isn't this the old "some of my best friends are" kind of argument? I mean, how can you...
It sort of is, and I think that's a key point in this entire thing is, it doesn't really matter. There's been a lot said about the origins of the word Redskin and whether it was racist and derogatory when it first started, which history suggests that it probably wasn't. There's been a lot of talk about how they got the name and how long they've had the name. And from the Native American perspective, none of that matters. What matters is that they find the name offensive now, and they find the word offensive now. And the meaning. Charles Krauthammer made this argument in his column against the name. I think it was in October, when he said, the meaning of words can change, and the connotation of words can change, and regardless of the history behind this word or whatever, the history behind this name, for quite some time now, they've thought this was offensive. And a good example of this is at the University of Miami in Ohio, or Miami University, in Ohio, which is named for the Miami tribe. They used the name Redskins for a long time, and for part of that time with the blessing of the Miami tribe. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, I think, the tribe came back and said, we don't want you to use this anymore. We think it's offensive. And Miami changed their name to the Redhawks in the 1990s. And that's a perfect example. These words, they can change meaning, they can change connotations, and the Washington Redskins, whatever their history is, it doesn't necessarily matter, because this is a word that people find offensive.
And yet, well, I guess I have a couple questions for you. One of them is, why is Dan Snyder so intransigent about it? Why wouldn't he take whatever goodwill he might get out of changing the name, not to mention whatever publicity, and go out there and say, look, I realize it was hurting people. Doesn't cost him any money. I mean, yeah, I guess he has to change the logos and all that, but on the grand scale of things, he'd get a lot more back in goodwill and in publicity than he'd ever spend to change the logo and the uniforms and so on. Why is he being so intransigent? Any idea?
Well, I think they make the financial argument. They say that it would cost a lot of money, and in the trademark case against them, the suit in which Native Americans have sued and said that this word under federal law shouldn't be allowed to be trademarked, they've said that losing the trademark would cost them every financial loss imaginable, which is probably true, because if they keep the name and they can't trademark it, then everybody else can use it and make money off of it too. As far as changing the name goes, whether that would cost much money is in dispute. There's actually a research from a few professors that suggests that the college teams who have changed their names and logos haven't really lost much money at all. It's kind of made up, as you said, from goodwill, from new merchandise sales. People go out and buy the new stuff. It's not like anybody's making drastic requests here to say, like, change the colors and change your uniforms and change everything else. It's sort of change the name and, get
on with your lives. Yeah. And, if I were the judge in that trademark case, my Solomonic solution would be, you can keep the trademark if you don't use it. How's that? So where is this going now? I mean, we've got Snyder being intransigent. We've got people like Alan and Ari Fleischer and Lanny Davis, who I find so objectionable that, Pete, we have to invite them on the show now. Make a note. But in 30 seconds or less, where is this case going?
It's gonna keep going. The trademark case could have a decision any day. That one's going to take some years to sort out because of the appeals process. The campaign against the name is, according to the activists, is going to continue. Ray Hallbritter from the Oneida Nation has called it a permanent campaign. They have pledged that they're going to keep on going. Dan Snyder's going to keep fighting it. But, these people say, these Native American activists say that this is inevitable, that they're going to win. And they eventually, whether it's today, whether it's next year, whether it's 10 years from now. And, I think they're going to keep fighting until they do.
I'm betting they're right. Travis Waldron, thanks so much for coming on, and I hope you'll keep us posted on this story.
I sure will. Thanks for having me.
You bet. This is RJ Eskow. We will be right back on Take